hello, and welcome to El Dino, and it's a very special episode today because we are testing out, you might notice I'm a little crystal clear, we're testing out the 4K options. So, 4K El Dino, I hope you enjoyed today because it's a special one to me. I have been reading The Rise and Reign of Mammals by Steve Brusatte. An amazing paleontologist. I actually emailed him with some questions and he replied, which I thought was so cool. So I'm really enjoying this book. It's all about mammal evolution and how we kind of got our start. Recommend it highly if you enjoy that kind of stuff. So I've been reading that and it got me thinking. And I was watching Prehistoric Planet. And it got me thinking about prehistoric mammals and, how during the Pleistocene and mostly the Eocene, they got gigantic. So today's episode's titled When They Were Giants, which I thought was really clever, and then I kind of thought, it's probably been done, but we'll try that anyways. So today, I want to just tailor this towards the fact that the script is based on prehistoric mammals that currently have modern-day relatives, and these prehistoric mammals need to have been at least twice the size, be that weight or height, of their current-day counterparts to make it into my script. So originally I had 14. I realized 14 is a lot to talk about, so I cut it down to 12. And I'm just going to read a little quote from The Rise and Reign of Mammals by Dr. Steve Brusatte, PhD, or Brusatte, PhD. So he talks about the size of mammals and why they got big. And he says this: "This suggests there is some limit to overall land mammal body size, probably dictated by a combination of factors. First is diet. The bulkiest mammals are always herbivores and are generally about 10 times heavier than the largest predators they live alongside. To get epically big, you need a steady source of calories, and the best way to do this is to binge on plants, which are more readily available than meat. Second has to do with temperature. Big animals are at risk of overheating, and the problems become very acute the bigger you get." So that's my little quote. And for the 12 mammals, I know I could have talked about a lot more. There's a lot of mammals that were huge and really made a difference, but these are kind of my fan favorites because I really just enjoy these. So to start us off, and I'm going to butcher the pronunciations of most of these. I should have done phonetics. I always say phonetics matter. I just didn't do that this time. So Castorides is how I say it, and Castorides is a prehistoric giant beaver. I also created all of these scales. So all these scales, I had to go and Google all kinds of graphs. So I had to find a 1 to 6 meter graph tall. Then I had to find one that was 1 to 10. I looked online to find silhouettes of people. I looked online, that's why he's a businessman. I looked online to find silhouettes of animals. And the silhouettes of animals I couldn't find, I had to find skeletonized versions of them and then have to use that version and kind of fix that somehow. I did use AI for some of this because I am no video editor or image editor, so some of them might look a little janky. The sizes, from what I can tell, are correct. Now, no one can really we can't for sure decide on all correct sizes, but so Castorides ohioensis and Castorides lyceurum. So their modern-day counterpart, American beaver, which is Castor canadiensis, and the Eurasian beaver, which is Castor fiber. The time period is the late Pliocene to the late Pleistocene, which is around 3 million to 10,000 years ago. Now, the geographical range of where you would find these in their time periods was North America. Dense concentrations are in the Great Lakes, Florida, and the Yukon. Then size, you can see the size comparison. So I put some fun little facts. You will tell which ones I did first, which one I did last. I think I did this one yesterday, so it looks a little better. So Castorides reached lengths of up to 1.9 to 2 meters long, which is 6.2 to 7.2 feet, and weighed an estimated 90 to 125 kilograms, which is about 200 to 275 pounds. That makes it roughly the size of a black bear and easily 3 to 4 times the weight of a modern 30-kilogram beaver. Now, talking about the evolutionary split, and this is kind of where they veered off from each other. So the evolutionary cousin, which is not a direct lineage, and that's, you will notice that too with some of these, is that it's not so much their ancestors, it's based off of what is closest to them. So, not a direct lineage. Castorides belong to a totally separate subfamily, which is the Castorodini lineage, which split from modern beavers, which split from the modern beaver subfamily, Castorinae, back in the Oligocene, roughly 30 million years ago. So I have fun facts as well, kind of just a fun little fact at the end. So while modern beavers have really sharp incisors that help them to cut down trees, and they are rodents, so they always grow, their teeth are always growing, Castorides had massive, blunt, ridged incisors that were up to 6 inches long that couldn't easily chop down trees. But the thought is, and from isotopic data, it shows they ate coarse vegetation, mostly aquatic plants, and when the swamps dried up in the end of the last ice age, they couldn't adapt like our wood-cutting modern beavers did. There's a couple other things we think we definitely might have been. Early humans might have also played a cause, but you never know. So next up is one of my favorites, my all-time favorites, and we are talking about Megatherium. So Megatherium, the giant ground sloth. This is Megatherium americanum. I love that image. I got a standing one. You can see the little three-toed sloth there. So counterparts are living dinosaur. I almost said dinosaurs. Living relatives today. Three-toed sloths, which is its Latin is Bradypus, and two-toed sloths, which is Colapus. So the time period, it was the Pleistocene to the very end of the Pleistocene, approximately 4 million to 10,000 years ago. The geographic range, they ranged from South America, specifically, and this is why I say specifically, it's not really technically true, lush pampas and woodlands of Argentina, Brazil, and Bolivia. And some made it, I'm fairly certain, into Mexico. At least they kind of got north. That's not exactly a confirmed fact, but some sites have them ranging north. Now, the size comparison, as you can see, this is an elephant-sized sloth. Megatherium was a unit, stretched up to 6 meters, which is 20 feet from snout to tail, and weighed around 4 metric tons, which is 4,000 kilograms. It stood nearly as tall as an elephant on its hind legs, and I love this because you can actually see it on its hind legs. The contrast, when you look at modern-day three-toed sloths and two-toed sloths, you can really see that's a big difference. The modern-day three-toed sloth weighs about 4 kilograms, which is 9 pounds, and spans to 2 feet. So it's not very big. Now, the evolutionary split, again, this is a distant cousin within, and I love this. This is the Latin name for all of the, and I guess relatives of this family, is Exarthra, or Exenarthra, which is like them, anteaters, I think armadillos, I believe. So the split between the ground sloth, which is the Megatheridae, and the tree sloths happened deep in the Eocene. The Eocene-Oligocene transition, at least 30 to 35 million years ago. And this is a kind of a really cool fact. Apparently, and I didn't have time to verify this completely, but it's thought that the modern two-toed sloth and the modern three-toed sloth, since they're different species, they would have convergently evolved to climb trees, which is kind of cool. So they didn't both just say, hey, we're going to climb trees. They were like, oh, I'm going to evolve to do this. I want to eat off the ground floor. And oh, I want to do that too. So we convergently evolved to do it at the same time, which is such a cool little tidbit. And then Megatherium, cool facts, didn't walk on its palms because the claws were so big. So it probably walked like kind of like a gorilla, or on the sides of its feet. So kind of like walk funny like that. And it was so big that it could have used its tail and its legs like a tripod. So it could just kind of lean back, kind of how we think maybe sauropods could have done that. Lean back and anchored itself, and then used its big arms to reach down and rip off branches and such. Next up is, it was a debate. I'm fairly certain it is the largest land mammal ever to live currently, or ever, I guess, until we know better, which is Paleoloxodon. So Paleoloxodon namidicus and the European Paleoloxodon antiquus. Their modern counterparts, they're more, if you've watched El Dino before, we know that Paleoloxodon is more related to Asian elephants. For this scale, I use an African bush elephant just to show how big African elephants currently are and how big this monster really was. So the largest, actually, sorry, the geographical range, they ranged from Eurasia, which is Western Europe, all the way across India to China and to Japan. And you might think, okay, I have to get to Japan. There was times when these continents were closer together and islands weren't islands just yet. The largest species, which is Paleodoxodon nimidicus, was a monster. So based on fragmentary femur bones, so it's mostly speculative because we don't have a ton, we've estimated that it stood 5 meters, which is 16.4 feet tall at the shoulder, and weighed 22 metric tons, which is 22,000 kilograms. A massive modern African bush elephant, which is like, let's say it's like a huge bull. It maxes out around 3.2 to 4 meters tall and weighs about 6 metric tons. Paleodoxodon was 4 times heavier and almost a half, I guess, like a point. I don't know. That's a weird thing. We'll say a meter taller, which is crazy when you think of a meter. A meter, that's 100 centimeters. That's huge. So the evolutionary split, it's an evolutionary cousin that's actually closer to modern day African elephants than the Asian elephant. Despite living across Eurasia, genetic analysis related Paleodoxodon species that they split from lineages leading to modern African elephants, Loxodonta, roughly 3.5 to 4 million years ago. So fun facts about Paleodoxodon, because it is just a monster. So a signature feature of Paleodoxodon, it has a massive prominent crest, kind of like running around the top of its forehead. And the thought is that it acted as a massive anchor point. It's called a parieto. Oh man, I should have practiced this. Parieto-occipital crest. And this acted as a massive anchor point for its immense neck muscles, because you had a head that was gigantic. That was a monster of an animal. And like if you're gonna have a head that's as big as a person standing, you have to have muscle to attach that. So this acts as a massive anchor point for the immense neck muscles needed to hold up against its gigantic head and its long, incredible, thick, and relatively straight tusks. So it's called a straight-tusked elephant. Then, going on to second place for the largest land mammal ever to exist, is Paraceratherium. I always say Paraceratherium, but I'm pretty sure it's pronounced Paraceratherium. Oh boy. Paraceratherium transsauerlicum, which has also been known as Indricotherium and Balucotherium, which is a giant hornless rhino. And this was a very big rhino. Looking at that head, you can kind of see, if you look like a baby rhino, you can see the ears and how the face really looks a lot rhino-like. Even the ankles and the feet look very rhino-like, which is very, very, very cool. So its counterpart that I chose was a modern-day white rhinoceros. I could have put up an Indian rhino, but I didn't. So the time period was the Oligocene epoch, which is 34 to 23 million years ago. Geographical range was Central and East Asia, so that's Kazakhstan, Mongolia, China, and Pakistan. And the size comparison, as you can see, this is a monster. So it stood roughly 4.8 meters, which is 15.7 feet tall at the shoulder, but its long neck allowed it to kind of browse at heights of up to 7 meters, so it's basically a giraffe rhino. It stretched over 7.4 meters, 24 feet in body length, and weighed an estimated 15 to 20 metric tons. Compared to a modern-day white rhino, which weighs about 2.3 metric tons and stands about 1.8 meters tall at the shoulder, Paraceratherium dwarfed it. Like, look at that difference. It's like a Doberman compared to a Chihuahua. Like, it's a big animal. So the evolutionary split, as we talked about, they are distant cousins within the odd-toed ungulate order, which is Perissodactylia. Paraceratherium belonged to an extinct family called Paraceratheridae, which is branched away from the true rhino family, which is Rhinocerotidae, very early on in their quote-unquote split, which is about 40 to 45 million years ago during the Eocene. And then our fun facts. So as you can tell, no horn. Instead, its skull adapted to high-altitude browsing with deeply incensed nasal cavities. This strongly implies it had a flexible, muscular upper lip, kind of like how modern-day rhinos do, and or a short, prehensile mini trunk, kind of like think of a tapir, to wrap around branches and strip high leaves. Now, that's not been proven, but it's a cool fact. It's a cool idea. Next up is one of my favorites is Titanotelopus, which is this is Titanotilopus nebraskensis, and it is a big camel. So modern day counterparts, we have technically four if you want to talk about that. 4 modern day camels: Bactrian camel and dromedary camel. So Camelus bactrianus and Camelus dromedaeus. And then the feral and/or non-feral species of these lived during the late Miocene to the late Pleistocene, so 10.3 million years to 300,000 years ago. Lived in North America, which, surprise, surprise, camels originated in North America, which I've talked about before on El Dino. I love camels. They're some of the coolest animals to me. So they have been concentrated. They found the fossils in Nebraska, Texas, and Kansas. Titanotilopus stood at an incredible 3.5, which is 11.5 feet tall, 3.5 meters that is, tall at the shoulder, and easily over 13 meters tall, including its head. It looks like a giraffe. A modern-day Bactrian camel looks small by comparison, as you can see, and standing around 1.8 to 2.1 meters at the shoulder and weighing roughly 800 kilograms. 2.5 metric tons for a camel is insane. So, Bactrian camels, one of my favorites. Dromedary is also really cool. But like, look at that thing. That is a monster by titanic proportions. It's like 2 dromedary camels tall. That's wild to me. So, evolutionary split. It's a cousin again, not a direct ancestor, as I said. Titanotilopus belongs to an extinct branch of the camelid tree, which is Camelidae. The split between the lineage that stayed in North America, eventually producing giants like Titanolopus and Camelops, and the lineage that migrated across the Bering Land Bridge to Asia, becoming the modern-day true camels. This happened about 10 to 12 million years ago. Now, the cool thing, if you didn't know this, camels are related to alpacas, llamas, and guanacos, so they are distant relatives. They're cousins. One thing that I think is really cool is apparently they had prominent upper canine teeth that would have been good for browsing foliage above the ground. It didn't eat grass, but was highly specialized, high-level browser, using its massive height to strip leaves and twigs from trees like a giraffe. It also didn't have the specialized water conservation hump in the exact way that modern-day camels do. So it would have lived in more temperate woodlands and savannas, so we know it definitely lived a different life. Next up is Arctodus simus, which is the short-faced bear. Now, it looks really freaky. For this, I struggled with this one for days. You can't find any good spectacled bear silhouettes online. You can't find any good Arctodus silhouettes online. So I had to take this one, put it into Canva, try to hide the bones, because it was a black and white showing the bones. Tried doing that. I kind of fixed it, then I kind of didn't. You notice it doesn't have a tail. This one was rough. I know it looks a bit like a guy in a bear suit. I tried my best with this one. Now, its modern day counterpart, as I said, spectacled bear, wears glasses, which is Tremarctos ornatus, is the closest living relative to this. Lived during the middle to late Pleistocene, extinct approximately 11,000 years ago. Lived in North America, widespread from Alaska to the Yukon, all the way down to Mexico. This thing was a traveler. Walked on all fours, or when it was walking on all fours, like modern-day bears. Stood about 1.5 to 1.8 meters tall at the shoulder, 5 to 6 feet, so about as tall as a modern-day man, just standing. But when it reared up on its hind legs, it stood to a terrifying 3.4 to 3.7 meters, 11 to 12 feet tall. We think that they could have got bigger as well. There have been some bones that found that could put that up to 14 feet tall, which is incredible. Large males weighed upwards about 1,000 kilograms, so 2,200 pounds. Compared to a modern-day grizzly, which stands about 1 meter at the shoulder, and on all fours, it averages about 300 to 400 kilograms. Now, I used a modern-day spectacled bear, which is smaller. It's quote-unquote a mid-level bear, a mid-sized bear. As you can see, shoulder male bears and so spectacled bears have sexual dimorphism, where the males are bigger than the females. This one, I said that at the shoulder, male bears vary between 76 to 91 centimeters at the shoulder. Females are 76, I think, to like 60 centimeters at the shoulder. And they weigh as much as like a black bear. Maybe like a small black bear. I weigh probably as much as a mid-sized spectacled bear. Now, evolutionary split, they are cousins. Arctodus belongs to the subfamily Tremarchinae, which is the short-faced bears. I wonder how they got that name. They're the only surviving member of the entire subfamily today, and it's highly endangered spectacled bear in South America. It lives in the Andes, so the split between short-faced bears and the lineage leading us to modern-day ursine bears, which is grizzlies, black bears, and polar bears, occurred roughly 13 to 15 million years ago during the Miocene. Now, fun facts. This thing could travel. As I said, it had you saw the gangly legs on this thing. Unlike modern bears that have a lumbering pigeon-toed gait, Arctodus had long, slender legs designed for efficient, long-distance pacing, and its toes pointed straight ahead. And its face technically wasn't that short, it just kind of looked short because its skull was incredibly deep and wide to support massive, bone-crushing jaw muscles. Instead of an ambush predator, it was likely, and I love this term, I love this terminology, it has been dubbed the ultimate kleptoparasite, using its massive size and speed to run in, bully away whatever predators were on a kill and say, this is mine now. When you're this big, you let the saber-tooth tigers do all the work. They're going to maul a bison, and you're just going to walk in and say, go away, this is mine now, and what are you going to do about it? Kleptoparasites, very cool. We're about halfway now, and this one is going to be rough for me to say. So, Joseph Ortegacia, which has been compared, if you look at some paleo art, they show it as like a giant capybara, which isn't technically true. So Joseph Ortegacia monesi, modern day counterpart, you might never have heard of this animal, because I never had either, is the Pacarana, which is Dino mice, Branicki, is the closest living relative, thought to have shared broad ecological similarities with the capybara. Now, it was around about the Pliocene to early Pleistocene, 4 to 2 million years ago. Lived in South America. We found it in San Jose, San Jose Formation in Uruguay. Now, look at this size. You think capybaras are big? Capybara, the largest living rodent today. I picked a adult Pacaranus, which averages about 25 to 30 centimeters tall. This thing stood 1.5 meters at the shoulder. It probably stood as tall as I did. It could have got up to 6'2". That's a big rodent. I don't like rodents anyways. I would definitely not like this thing. A cow-sized rodent is just terrifying to me. So about 3 meters in length, stood 1.5 meters tall at the hip and or shoulder, depending on how it would stand. Weighed about 1,000 kilograms, so 2,200 pounds. And the Pacarana, maybe 15 kilograms. Not a very big animal. Modern day capybaras max out at approximately 60 kilograms. Still nothing. This thing is 16 times heavier than a capybara. Now, it's an evolutionary cousin with the infraorder Caviomorpha, which is the South American rodents. So Joseph Ortegacia belonged to the extinct family Dinomyidae, which modern Pacaranas are the only surviving member. So again, South American animal with only one surviving member in South America. Are the only surviving members of the family. The split between the subfamilies that led to modern-day small-bodied Pacaranas and the prehistoric giant lineages happened back in the Miocene, roughly 15 to 20 million years ago. Now, fun facts about this giant, disgusting rodent. Biomechanical studies of its skull show that this giant had 12-inch incisors that could strike with a force of around 1,400 newtons, equivalent to a modern-day tiger. Because its teeth were structurally built to withstand much more pressure than needed for soft chewing vegetation, paleontologists think it uses teeth exactly like an elephant uses its tusks, maybe digging up roots, defending itself against predators, especially there was quite a few terror birds that it would have had to compete with at the time, and maybe fighting rivals for mates. Again, a hippo-sized rodent, not my thing. Next up, talking about big ones, Glyptodon. Another amazing, I think this is technically an Exarthron. Yeah, it is an Exarthra. So Glyptodon, clavipus, a gigantic armadillo. I picked modern-day counterpart of a 9-banded armadillo. You could say the pink fairy armadillo because it's tiny. You could have picked the giant armadillo. I picked 9-banded because it's more commonly known. Lived about the Pleistocene to the end of the Pliocene to the end of the Pleistocene, so 3.2 million to 10,000 years ago, and everything that was about 10,000 years ago probably lived alongside humans, which then puts that into perspective. Did we have a hand in wiping these things out? Lived in South America, so widespread across Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay, with close relatives migrating to North America. Glyptodon was roughly the size and shape of a classic Volkswagen Beetle, so about 3.3 meters in length, 11 feet, weighed up to 2 metric tons, 2,000 kilograms, and just an absolute monster. 9-banded armadillos reach about 60 centimeters top of their shell. This sucker was 1.5 meters at the top of its carapace, or its shell. This thing was a monster. Evolutionary split, they're cousins again within the superorder of Exanarthra. For a long time, it was debated whether Glyptodons were its own kind of separate lineage, but recent ancient DNA extractions from Diodicarus, which is a different type of Glyptodon, fossil, a close relative, confirmed they nested right within the armadillo family tree. They split from their ancestors of modern armadillos in the Eocene roughly 35 million years ago, carving out a niche as giant grazing herbivores. Now, fun facts. Unlike modern armadillos that have a flexible carapace, these do not. So, Glyptodon had a completely rigid carapace. It was solid fused dome made of over 1,000 interlocking bony plates, or osteoderms, which I've talked about before. To top it off, it had a cap of bone on its skull like a helmet. And its tail was encased in ringed bands of bone. Because it couldn't tuck its head inside its shell like a turtle, its massive body armor had to be completely unyielding to withstand attacks from apexes like Smilodon. It was basically a walking boulder. Next up, gentle giant that unfortunately we definitely killed off. This is, out of all the animals on this list, we actually wiped this thing out. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 left after this, and we are the cause of this, and it's very, very unfortunate because we missed this animal by about 200 years. I'm talking about the Steller's sea cow. Steller's sea cow, Hydrodemalis gigas, modern day counterparts, dugongs, which is closest living relative, and then the West Indian manatee, which is second closest living relative. Lived from the late Pliocene until its extinction due to overhunting by European fur traders in 1768 AD. Imagine this. Just side tangent here. Imagine something this big in the waters of North America. Imagine the Inuit seeing this all the time. Imagine just the incredible aspects of this. It went from Japan to Alaska. But they ended up in the ended up in the Commander Islands in the Bering Sea. We saw this. We lived beside this. This was before World War II. This was before the Boer War. This was before the War of 1812, and we wiped them out for fur. It's just incredible to think this gentle giant, this monster, was just wiped out because we did that. And that's one of my biggest issues is I will never blame people 10,000 years ago for hunting or overhunting to thrive, because without that we wouldn't be here. I don't think we ever needed to wipe out the Steller's sea cow. Now, size comparison, as you can see, grew an astonishing 8 to 9 meters, 26 to 30 feet in length, and weighed an estimated 8 to 10 metric tons, which is 8,000 to 10,000 kilograms. That makes it heavier than a modern-day African elephant, which is insane. So modern-day dugongs, which max out about 3 meters in length and weighing up to 400 kilograms, it's over 20 times heavier than its living cousin. I picked a West Indian manatee because I actually found that online for a silhouette. Technically, dugongs are closer relatives, but you can kind of see the difference here. Evolutionary split, again, they're cousins, all within the Dugonidae family. Steller's sea cow was the ultimate crown species of the subfamily Hydrodemalina, a branch that adapted to cold waters and a massive body size. They split from a tropical lineage that led to the modern dugong back in the Miocene around 15 to 20 million years ago. Now, our fun facts of the day. The animal was so specialized for grazing that on thick kelp canopies and shallow rocky waters that it completely lost its phalanges. So no finger bones anymore. No finger bones. It was just big, meaty flippers. No claws or fingernails at all on its forelimbs. Its flipper-like stumps covered in dense shoe leather-like skin that it used to walk along the bottom of the seafloor and scrape kelp off rocks. George Wilhelm Steller, the naturalist who survived a shipwreck to document them, noted that their hide was so thick and bark-like, up to an inch thick in some places, that it acted as an evolutionary shield against grinding sea ice and sharp rocks. That's insane. Now we got 4 more. I'm trying to move through this. Hopefully this isn't too long for you. I hope you enjoy this. This is kind of a two-parter. We're going to talk about 2 back-to-back. Talking about lemurs, big lemurs. Shout out my OG, Zabumbafu. I miss you every day. We're talking about Megalatopus and Archaeoindris fontononti. So Megalatopus, you can see this. It looks kind of like Elf. It's the one in the middle. It's like if Elf was combined with a koala. It's a very freaky-looking thing. And you're going to notice that Archaeoindris does not look amazing by any means. I had to use bits of AI to try to like map this sucker out. Does not look good. Now, thankfully, the injury looks nice. The injury I did find online, but it might not be totally exact. So Megalatopus was massive for a lemur. It's called the koala lemur, reaching weights of around 50 to 80 kilograms, so 110 to 175 pounds, with a body length roughly of 1.3 to 1.5 meters. So as you can see, I had to put it in a tree. You can kind of tell how tall it would be. Probably as tall as Justin will say. So still big, still a big animal, but just not nearly as gargantuan as its other friend here, Archaeoindris. So evolutionary split, these are both cousins of lemurs. So we'll start with kind of Megalatopus. So within the family of Lepimyridae, while they share a close common ancestor, the giant subfossil lemurs of Madagascar split from their smaller cousins relative in the late Miocene, around 10 to 12 million years ago, taking advantage of the island ecosystem completely devoid of large monkeys or apes. So they kind of just filled that niche. You can call that convergent evolution. Their closest, really, I think, technically their closest living relative, they're both very different. So fun facts with, we'll say Megalatopus, it has weird looking eyes. They're on the side of its head. Very strange, side of its head, rather than facing completely forward like most other primates. This gave it a wider field of view to scan for predators while wrapped around tree trunks. It had a kind of like snout that was heavily elongated, kind of like a proboscis monkey, sort of, I think. They gave it, actually I lost my train of thought here. Even wilder snout, funny looking nose. Completely lacked upper incisors, instead had a tough, kind of like a pad of tissue on the top of its mouth, which combined with high mobility, muscular upper lips to strip leaves off branches, very similar to modern day koalas or black rhinos. And then Archaeoindris, it was huge. It's called the gorilla lemur. Geographic range, they're both in Madagascar. Technically, the crazy thing about Megalatopus is, and I think they were both at the same time. I unfortunately didn't put that in my notes. They both lived in the Pleistocene to the Holocene, so like Megalatopus, it was still around when the first humans arrived on Madagascar. And they probably both went extinct around 350 BC to 500 AD. Now, the thought is predation by humans. When you have a lemur the size of a gorilla and a lemur the size of an orangutan, you usually are kind of hungry. And it's Madagascar. They don't have much going for them. They actively have the bubonic plague in the soil. You got to eat what you can eat. Fun facts about just the Archaeoindris. The anatomy of this animal looks fairly much like a gorilla with a lemur head. So it probably couldn't climb too well. It'd be more like a gorilla in that sense. It had a 500-pound frame. Like, it was a monster. And it said probably spent most of the time on the ground like a giant ground sloth, which is just so cool. And then our last 2 for today. Now, we talked about quite a few animals, and this is one of my favorites, is Diprotodon australis, and I think I picked for this clip, it's Diprotodon optatum. 2 subspecies. So modern day counterparts is the bare-nosed wombat and the koala, which technically they're all marsupial, so they're all weighted. I think this is just a western wombat. So time period, Pleistocene epoch, 1.6 million years ago until its extinction, roughly around 44,000 years ago. It heavily overlapped with the arrival of the first indigenous people of Australia. So there's a good chance that the Australian indigenous people wiped out these rhino-sized wombats. Lived in Australia, and it was just crazy. It was the size of a large rhino, stood about 1.8 meters, 6 feet tall at the shoulder, stretched to up to 3.8 meters or 12.5 feet from nose to tail, and weighed a colossal 2.8 metric tons. That is 2,800 kilograms. Compare that to a modern-day bare-nosed wombat, which weighs about 20 to 35 kilograms, so 44 to 77 pounds, like a large child, and sits less than a foot off the ground. Now, again, they're evolutionary cousins, not direct ancestors, within the suborder of Vombatiforms. So Diprotodon belongs to the extinct family Diprotodontidae. While they look like gigantified wombats, phyologically, studies show that they actually split from common ancestors of modern wombats and koalas way back in the late Oligocene, 25 to 30 million years ago. Now, just like modern-day wombats, this is really cool too. So they're marsupials, they have a pouch. Where's the pouch, you might ask? Modern-day wombats have a backwards-facing pouch. So do Diprotodon. It possessed a backwards-facing pouch. This was a vital evolution adaptation because they spent their lives digging with dirt and in the dirt for roots and tubers. And if you had a forward-facing pouch and you were digging, you get a lot of dirt on the baby. You don't want to put dirt on a jelly bean-sized baby. Because of marsupials, they have very small and they almost have they're in a different class of how they have children. They have jelly bean-sized babies that crawl into the pouch. And then nurse in the pouch until they are able to get out of the pouch. You're not throwing dirt on a newborn baby. That's a bad call. So because of that, they had to do that. And it's thought they traveled in massive herds, which is so cool. And our last one is a really cool one. And you might not even know what this animal is. So we're talking about Titanohyrax. The Titanohyrax, again, you're going to notice it looks kind of weird. I had to use AI to get this. It somehow made it look, I don't know. I'm not a fan of this, but I got the real little tiny hyrax. That's a proper one. I found that online. So this Titanohyrax ultimus and a rock hyrax. Titanohyrax andrewsi also. So Titanohyrax was a monster who lived during the Eocene to the early Miocene, about 40 million, 20 million years ago. Ranged all across northern and eastern Africa. We found classic fossil specimens are pulled from the famous Jebel Quantrani formation in the Fayum Depression of Egypt. So it was an Egyptian little guy. Now, size comparison. While the earliest species were smaller, the largest members of Titanohyrax, this is mostly ultimus, grew to a massive proportion, with body sizes estimated ranging from 500 kilograms to over 1,000. Basically a hippo. That puts it at the size of modern-day black rhino or a heavy ox. Modern day rock hyrax, you might be able to see that little man, very, very small. They're the ones that you always see on Instagram that go awa awa. That's just, they make some really weird noises and they screech and they whistle. Modern day hyraxes weigh 2 to 5 kilograms. So they're pretty small. Evolutionary split, they are distant cousins within the order of Hyraxidae. So hyraxes belong to a primitive group of placental mammals called the Penungulatae. Which famously includes, and this is why I put it in this. So this includes elephants and sea cows. So elephants, sea cows, hyraxes, and aardvarks are all in the same big family. They're all related to each other, which is so cool to me. It belonged to a specialized, extinct family of giant, long-limbed browsers that split from the lineage that led to modern-day small-bodied rock hyraxes during the Eocene transition roughly 40 million years ago. And our last fun fact of the day. If you look at the fossilized jaw and teeth of Titanohyrax, they feature highly specialized, complex, high-crowned molar teeth, designed strictly for grinding down tough, fibrous, tropical vegetation. Because true parasodactyls, like ancient rhinos and horses, migrated into Africa from Eurasia, these giant hyraxes basically were the rhinos and horses before they showed up. Which is so cool. So it filled a niche that hadn't been filled yet. So hyraxes just grew to be big to fill that niche. So convergent evolution, so cool. Love it. Every time you see it, it's cool. Blows my mind. That's the end of my notes. I just want to say, I hope you enjoyed today. I know there was a lot of information. I'm kind of just, it's instead of me writing a script and actually going down, this was more like an old Dino where I just rhyme off facts to you. But I think it's incredible. I hope you enjoyed the scales. Now, they might not be 100% correct. I tried to check as much as I could using Wikipedia. There's a couple other sites that I use, like Ancient Wildlife, that I tried to find exact sizes on. And you might ask yourself, Eldon, there's so many cool scales online. Why not use those? And you know what? Good point. I really wanted to make my own, though. I wanted to have something I created. So I spent the last week just making these. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope that the sizes can kind of show you just really how big these animals were and how small they are nowadays. And last but not least, again, Rise and Reign of Mammals. Absolutely love this book. I want to say, like, Steve does an amazing job. I'm not going to try his last name again because I keep butchering it and I feel bad. But anybody who you email, and I emailed him questions about this book, and he responded within 24 hours. He responded within 12 hours, I'm fairly certain. And that's just incredible. To have a paleontologist of this regard actually email me back made my day, made my week. So I really hope you enjoyed today's episode of El Dino. My name's Eldon Atkin. Thank you for watching live from Media Hub on riotradio.ca.